Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com. And today I want to do a little experiment, all right? I'm going to test my blood glucose and my blood ketones, which I haven't done in a while. I don't normally test that much. It is sometime in the morning. I have not yet had a meal. I have had a coffee, but we shall see where I'm at. I'm testing with the Keto Mojo. I ordered some more strips of the Keto Coach because I do feel like they are a little bit more accurate from a beta-hydroxybutyrate standpoint. My blood glucose is going to be very high and my ketones are going to be very low. Let's just see how high and how low. We are at 92 on the blood glucose, which is pretty high having not had a meal. And then let's test the ketones. I might not even register as being in ketosis. I'll explain why in a minute. So, let's see what we got here on the ketones. I keep getting this Air 2 message, and then it goes away. I don't know if y'all are getting that or not. 5, 4, well, I'm a little off. 3, 2, 1, and 1.6. Wow. That's actually pretty high. I had a fatty coffee a minute ago that just had heavy cream in it, but I wouldn't imagine it would bump it up that much. I tested earlier and it was showing low, which is very, very low, obviously. So I want to talk about this because I feel like this video is going to be messed up now because my ketones are actually pretty high. But I've been measuring pretty low on the ketones and pretty high on the blood glucose, which is concerning if you don't know what's going on. But I feel like I do know what's going on, and I'm going to share it with you right now. So, first of all, the longer you're keto adapted, the lower your blood ketones are going to get relative to where they were when you first started the ketogenic diet. Like, for instance, if you're first starting the diet, you're using the urinalysis test to test acetoacetate, you're going to get a color coordination there and show high ketones. But as you get more adapted, you start to notice that you don't even show up on those urine strips anymore. Like I wouldn't even register on the urine strips because as you become more efficient at using ketones, your body excretes less of them through your urine, which is why those are pretty much irrelevant to use after you've been adapted for a length of time. The blood ketones then become the gold standard. However, the longer you're adapted, the lower those blood ketone readings get for the same reason. Once you become more efficient at using beta-hydroxybutyrate, your body gets better at uptaking those from the bloodstream into the cell and using them as a fuel source. So there's less beta-hydroxybutyrate floating around in your bloodstream to be tested and picked up by a meter. Generally speaking, I'm happy if my blood glucose is less than 100. Ideally, I like to see it around the 70 milligrams per deciliter range. Here lately, I've been much higher on the blood glucose. Like yesterday, or not yesterday, but day before yesterday, I measured like 113, and that was pretty high, a little alarmingly high for me. And here's why. A couple different reasons. One, I just finished training, so your blood glucose is going to be higher after you train because as you're training, you're utilizing your stored muscle glycogen. That's going to be released into your bloodstream. You're going to have higher blood glucose as a result of that. You're also going to have higher blood glucose if you're stressed or not sleeping well. Both pretty much describe me to a T. So my blood glucose is oftentimes higher as a result of that. On a more macro basis, the past month, my ketones have been relatively low and my glucose has been relatively high. And that's because I'm in a bulk right now. I'm in a caloric surplus, a pretty significant caloric surplus. I'm consuming about 4,000 calories a day at least. I don't have my phone on me to tell you what my macros are, but I'm doing a building phase right now, kind of like a metabolic boosting phase, so I'm significantly above my caloric baseline intake, which is probably around the 3,000 to 3,300, maybe 3,500 range, but I've bumped it up to 4,000 calories a day minimum to help reset that baseline at a higher caloric intake. So when you're in a caloric surplus and you're focusing on building muscle, you're going to have less beta-hydroxybutyrate and higher glucose. Ketones, kind of from an evolutionary standpoint, are a fuel source used by the human body when times of food are scarce. So like when you're in a fasted state, or like if you're out, hundreds of thousands of years ago, if there was little food, and you're basically having to fast until you find your next meal, hunt down and kill your next meal, your body's, of course, my phone would start ringing through my computer. But in those periods of fasting, when food was scarce, your body would produce beta-hydroxybutyrate, so the ketones, from fat oxidation. So your body's tapping into your stored body fat, producing those beta-hydroxybutyrate molecules to fuel your body and your brain. And when you're in a caloric surplus, when you're in a fed state, you're by default going to have fewer beta-hydroxybutyrate ketone molecules floating around your bloodstream, because you're not going to be producing as much, because you're not having as much fat oxidation in your body. In a building phase like I am now, let's just back up a little bit more. Can you build muscle on keto? Yes, obviously. Can you do a bulk on keto? Yes, you can. A lot of people think that keto is more used for like a cutting protocol, which is true, but you can definitely build muscle and have an official bulk or a building phase in a state of ketosis, but you're going to have lower blood ketone readings for that very reason. Since there's going to be less fat oxidation, less fat loss from your stored adipose tissue, you're not going to be producing near as many ketones. Now, that does not mean your level of keto adaptation has waned any. Like for me, having been strict keto for 5 years now, when I transition into a building phase and I'm in a caloric surplus, I'm in a fed state, I'm having less fat oxidation. I've actually put on a little bit of body fat over the past month in taking this higher caloric intake. So as a result of that, my beta-hydroxybutyrate production measurable via blood test is lower, and my glucose is higher. But that doesn't mean I'm any less fat adapted. I'm not eating any carbs other than, trace carbs found in some vegetables, but I'm honestly kind of gravitating more towards like carnivore-esque approach. So I'd have some vegetation. I usually have about a keto brick, one keto brick a day, and then lots of meat. I'm incorporating a lot of organ meat right now, a lot of liver, which does have higher carb count due to the glycogen in the liver. But generally speaking, I'm not taking in very much dietary carbohydrates right now. So for me to have a higher blood glucose and a lower blood ketone reading, that's predominantly a result of me being in such a caloric surplus overall. So this whole video is basically just to illustrate the fact that you're going to need to expect lower blood ketone readings, higher blood glucose readings when you're in a bulking phase following a ketogenic protocol. Don't be alarmed by those worse numbers or less than desirable numbers, because it doesn't necessarily mean you're out of ketosis. It doesn't mean you're not fat adapted. It doesn't mean you're not keto adapted. Your body is still using the fuel you're taking in. So if you're still giving it pretty much strict ketogenic foods and strict ketogenic macros, you're still keto adapted. You're just going to have less of that showcased via blood testing. And that pretty much concludes this little video. So we'll see you tomorrow.